And joining me now is another of our special guests. I'm joined by Ravi Agrawal. He's editor-in-chief of foreign policy based there in New York. Appreciate you joining us, Ravi. Just make sense of this last week for our viewers here in India. Has this taken you and other analysts completely by surprise, the manner in which this war has been prosecuted and how quickly it's almost being turned into a regional war of sorts?
So I won't exactly call it surprise, Rajdeep, because the Trump administration had telegraphed many of these things ahead of time. They had always said that they did not really think the diplomatic talks were going to work. They had clearly amassed all of this weaponry and the aircraft carriers in the region. And usually when the Trump administration does that, they use it with the precedent we've seen in Venezuela and also Iran last year. And then thirdly, we've always known that this is something Israel wanted to do, and there was open talk that Israel would start the attack and the United States would join. So I am not, in fact, surprised that this has happened. I think what is surprising so far in the last few days of this conflict is that Khamenei was assassinated as quickly as he was. That surprised me. And then the fact that Iran actually has come good on what it said it would do. It said it would regionalize the war ahead of time were it to be attacked. And it has actually done that. That to some degree has surprised me. So the attacks on a number of US bases around the Gulf, the Middle East, more broadly on civilian targets as well, that kind of lashing out in response tells me that the regime is desperate. They have their backs against the wall. They will do whatever they can. And at this point, Rajdeep, this is now a question of who has a higher pain threshold. Does Israel have a higher pain threshold to keep going, or Iran? And I didn't even mention the United States there because I think President Trump has the lowest pain threshold of the three participants in this war.
Interesting, you're saying that President Trump has the lowest pain threshold of the three participants. So presumably the last thing he wants is a protracted war. Do you think that at some stage he might have thought that this would become Venezuela when they were preparing for this war? It'll be a quick, decisive victory. Or were the Americans prepared for a potential long haul? And is Donald Trump mentally prepared for a long haul wherein criticisms might mount against him back home?
Look, I think they were militarily prepared in that they clearly had amassed all of this firepower and also defensive artillery around the region. So they were militarily prepared. In terms of psychologically prepared, politically prepared, I'm not so sure. I mean, remember, Donald Trump did not sell this war to the American people. It is unpopular at home. It is technically illegal because Congress is supposed to approve these things. By international law, it is also illegal. There was no attempt to have consultations at the United Nations or among the international community more broadly. All of those things could come back to hurt the Trump administration. But I think most of all, what matters here is that Trump came to power saying very clearly that he doesn't like to be mired in long-term conflicts. He's criticized the war in Iraq. He's criticized the war in Afghanistan. And I think the Venezuela action in January may have created a false sense of security that the United States can go in quickly and achieve its ends. And then, Rajdeep, finally, it's unclear what the American goal was here. Was it regime change? Was it purely hurting its nuclear program? Was it hurting the missile program? Israel has a much clearer set of objectives. I'm not so sure the United States did. And in part because of that uncertainty, I think Trump may struggle to figure out when exactly to exit this war.
What, according to you, are the US and Israel objectives then? As you said, there's no clarity over the US objectives. Is it regime change? Is it not? Is it just getting Iran to abandon its nuclear program? Is it getting a more moderate leadership in place? The Israelis seem to want the annihilation of the entire leadership of Iran. Will those objectives somewhere perhaps diverge at some stage or the other? Is that? I'm just trying to understand from all the guests I've had over the last week, what is the end game?
Well, it would help if someone was clear about that on any of the sides here. I think the United States has not been clear. In fact, they've said yes to every single thing you just said: regime change, hitting the nuclear installations, the missile installations, and also the protesters and supporting democracy in Iran. The United States has said yes to each of those things already. But of course, you can't have all of those objectives. So I think the United States has not gone in with a clear set of objectives. Israel, I think, does have a clear set of objectives, and I think you just said it there. I think it's annihilation of the regime. I don't think they care about what comes next, as long as it is severely weakened and unable to attack them. The third player here, of course, is Iran, and I think Iran's objective at this point is survival. The regime wants to survive at any cost, and the reason why it is attacking a range of actors in the Middle East and the Gulf is because Rajdeep, offense is much easier than defense. When you send a swarm of drones to Dubai, or when you shoot a ballistic missile at Doha, a lot of these, the drones cost $20,000 a piece. The ballistic missile is part of an arsenal of thousands. But when you try to shoot down these things, you're using up very, very expensive interceptors and missile defense systems that are a ratio of, 100 to 1 in terms of cost. And so a lot of these countries and Israel and the United States are very worried about running out of their defenders, their interceptors, before Iran can keep going. So in that sense, the Iranian regime just wants to survive as long as it can, and then emerge from this weakened, but still intact.
What, therefore, for you is the most likely scenario? I know this is a tough question to answer, particularly with Donald Trump in the White House. You never know what happens next. But what is the most likely scenario, in your view, now that we are almost a week into this conflict?
I think continued degradation of Iranian attacking ability, whether it's missiles or drones. I think the regime will end up in some severely weakened form, ending up surviving. I do not think this ends in democracy for Iran, at least not in the short term. And that's because this regime has gone down a path of absolute repression. And as long as there are soldiers, the Basij, the IRGC, which number in the hundreds of thousands, as long as they exist, they will not allow for an alternative. The United States is the key actor here, and a lot depends on how long it stays in this war. My suspicion is that with each passing day, if there are more losses to US allies in the region, then the United States will find it harder and harder to stay in and to provide a clear rationale for staying in. A lot depends on that. And through that, we will understand what kind of Iran will emerge from here.
Do you see a possibility of this conflict escalating beyond West Asia? Or is this largely now a conflict confined to who controls West Asia? It's had a spillover on other parts of the world. We've had an Iranian warship which was torpedoed in the Indian Ocean. But by and large, do you believe this will be a conflict that will play out only in West Asia? Or could there be any possibility of it having any repercussions beyond the region?
Oh, the possibilities are already there. You mentioned the torpedo attack on the Iranian ship in the Indian Ocean. That sets a very dangerous precedent. And if you are, in the Iranian military, you will now be looking to retaliate in some form, in some way, somewhere. And I think part of Tehran's strategy is not just survival, but to raise the costs for Israel and particularly the United States. And by raise the costs, I mean both militarily, but also politically. Iran wants the rest of the world to pressure the United States to stop this now. So that pressure can come from the form of higher crude prices. It can come from the form of Europeans or India saying, look, we are facing losses or suffering in various ways. That kind of political diplomatic pressure as well. I think Iran will be looking to pull every single lever it can. Because again, I mean, I can't stress enough how much they feel like they have their backs to the wall. And this is existential for this Iranian leadership, what's left of it. They will pull every lever they can. Again, the fact that they're attacking Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, we've now got three of the biggest airline hubs in the world have shut down, causing global travel chaos. That this is serious pain now to a lot of people around the world.
You're saying it's existential for Iran. Presumably for Netanyahu, it's the opportunity he's been waiting for a long time to annihilate the Iranian leadership. And for Donald Trump, it's about legacy, that here is a president who took out the Iranian leadership. Would I be right in saying that that's how the three principal players are looking? One looking for survival, the other for complete dominance over a region, and the third looking at legacy.
I think that's exactly right. I think for Netanyahu, it is also about survival because he has, corruption charges against him. He needs to be seen at home as a tough, strong leader who keeps the people safe. They will have elections at some point, and he, of course, needs to keep winning elections to not have those corruption cases against him proceed. But yes, you're right in your assessment of the three leaders. I think Trump, again, is the wild card here because he does care about legacy, but a lot depends on how this is read, how the events of the past week are spun in the United States. This war is not popular in the United States. Trump has not done a good enough job of explaining to the American people why the United States is involved. And once the price at the pump, the gas prices in the United States start going up, as they already have, he will have to explain why that is the case as spring and summer approaches here.
My final question, do you see India having any role at all? Can a country remain perfectly neutral in this hyper-polarized environment? Can India tread that cautious, is cautious diplomacy the way forward, or should India be taking a stand and drawing a red line somewhere or the other saying enough is enough, territorial sovereignty cannot be violated?
Well, it's hard to advise New Delhi what to do given how polarized the world is and also given how rules and norms have been challenged before this as well. I mean, this is not the first time this has happened. I think the way to do these things is generally quietly and behind the scenes diplomatically. I think, again, what happened in the Indian Ocean in particular will be very troubling to the Modi administration. And I'm sure that behind the scenes, they will have passed on that sentiment to the United States. But in any real way, in terms of either supporting the Iranians or Israel, I cannot imagine it being in India's interest to get involved.
Okay. Ravi Agrawal of Foreign Policy joining me there from New York. Always appreciate your time. Thanks very much, Ravi.